What up, though? Welcome to Gangsta's Paradise. It's where I kick cautionary street tales. Click that like button, click that subscribe button, and click that little bell. That way you can get notifications for whenever I drop a documentary. Support Gangsta's Paradise by going to Teespring and purchasing GP merchandise. I appreciate the support. Thank you all for checking out Gangsta's Paradise. Let's take a moment to check out the comment section. One guy said, what gives me the right to cover stories? I have as much right as any other media entities. I've been covering stories for 16 years. This machine is already in motion, and this train will keep moving full steam ahead. Let's go to my guy, Rick Flames. I appreciate your comments. I am from Detroit. You know that. I have some street stories, as you know, but there were other stories that wasn't about the streets. Legends who never touched the streets. I once trained to be a boxer in the 80s at the gym on Connors and Mahiris Park. I hope I ain't pronouncing that correctly. I was trained by a guy named Blue who fought the great Muhammad Ali. Pull up. So yes, there's plenty other stories, positive ones. I agree with you, Rick Flames, and I'm always appreciate conversating with you, conversing with you in the comment section. Like I said, man, get on YouTube and start your a page. I'm sure plenty of people would love to hear your stories. There's a lot of people out there with stories, and they just sitting there with bottled up in the stories. That's why I always tell people, I encourage you guys to get on YouTube and start your page. But it's things that goes on behind the scenes that you guys may not necessarily see, and it's tough being African American and being independent, and you're building a media thing, So the most critical people will come from your own kind. So, but like I said, you just have to weather the storm and keep pushing forward. But yeah, I'm sure we all would love to hear some of your stories. So I appreciate you and salute to Rick Flames. I appreciate you, and I got much respect for you. And I stepped outside of the D for a minute, but for this one, I'm going to take it back to the D and my guy, Wuzzle, my brother's keeper. When we talk about someone like Wuzzle, it takes me back to what I've been saying, the difference between the 80s, which I call the Kingpin Era, and the 90s, which I call the Money Getter Era. And Wuzzle fits the bill. My brother's keeper, loyal to his friends, and this is someone I consider a brother. Wuzzle is basically everybody's little brother that has grown up and became a man. When you know better, you're supposed to do better. And Wuz is the perfect example of that. When he caught his case for distribution, he had time to sit back and reflect, rest, get his thoughts together, and most importantly, learn about himself. Starting out as a young hustler in the 80s. Like most of us, we are young hustlers and scratching the surface. The kingpins of the 80s left a vacuum, and guys like Wuzzle put his hands in the pot. Due to the residue those guys left behind, and it got worse over time. Wuzzle got to the point where he was getting money. But as a young hustler during the Kingpin Era, I asked Wuzzle, who did he see that was out there at that point in time? You had a young hustler like 6 Mile Chuck was out there hustling at that time. Then you had another guy named Pee Wee that a lot of people may not talk about nowadays, one of the kingpins from back in the days. But those are some of the people that Wuzzle would see as a young hustler coming up in the game during the 80s. But on the other hand, Wuzzle pretty much didn't care for the kingpin status thing. It's a 6 Mile thing. He's a one-man show. He wasn't dealing with 10 different crack houses like the guys of the 80s. You're not about to pull down on Wuzzle and have a discussion about the Chambers brothers. He's very familiar with the story, but it's not of super interest to him to discuss the kingpins of the 80s. We're a little older than was, so he didn't see Maserati Rick or deal with Demetrius Holloway, so he wasn't caught up in the East Side politics. He didn't have beef like that. He didn't have people just point him out of a lineup and just say, "Hey, I hate you for life." And that's what happens when it comes to the streets. During those days, Wuz didn't have any interest at all in the East Side politics or the street politics. Taking it back to the 6 Mile thing of staying in his own lane. This is someone I would primarily see on a daily basis. This is someone I see grow into Hustle Wuzzle. He has many close friends like Scuzz, Bo, Ed, and many others. I called Sheree and I told her I'm doing a cover story on your dad. So don't call me talking about, I didn't know my dad was out there like that. So we just laughed about it, and she sent me some pictures actually for this cover story. We did business together, but we didn't discuss street politics. Like, I wasn't checking for his hustle or how he's operating his thing. But one thing I do know, this is a one-man show. He didn't deal with a staff. He didn't deal with lieutenants. He didn't deal with workers. He didn't have to come up with payroll every week for these workers and all that. He was just strictly a one-man show. And like I said, we didn't discuss street politics. And I was always glad not to talk those politics because I'm talking this stuff all the time. All the time. So when I get with this guy, we try to chill, smoke something, may have a drink or something like that, or we're listening to some music. But we did do business together back in those days. He was a big Tupac fan. There's no denying that. He told people way back then, Tupac is going to be a legend. 99.9% of the time, if you pull up on Wuzzle, he was bumping Pac. I wasn't a big Pac fan in the beginning, but I grew onto him later on. He came to town, and since Wuzzle was a big fan, we decided to go to the concert. I had just got back from hustling out of town, and I believe Chuck had just got back as well. But Wuz didn't go to the concert. In fact, when I had went out of town, me and my guy Black had just made a run out of town. Salute to my guy Black. He's out of the feds right now. I love Black to death, and I say salute to him. That's my guy for life, and that's a fact. But back then, it was the 40-ounce era. So we sitting outside on the west side, a concert hall on the west side. I forget the name of it, but it's the 40s era. So we sitting out outside this concert, drinking these 40s and smoking weed. And I believe we was trying to get some tickets or something like that. But we're sitting outside the concert hall, drinking these beers and smoking weed. And we look, and Little disappeared. My guy Little, shouts out to Little. He just disappeared. He walked over to the door and he went inside and he never came back out. He was in there for like an hour. So me and Chuck, we went to go investigate to see what happened to him. Come to find out, he had snuck inside the concert before it actually started. So me and Chuck, we walked in as well. We just walked on in there. And they were having sound check at that point. And back then I questioned Tupac's security because we just walked right up on these folks like there was nothing. So I was questioning that before he even got shot and all that. I was like, man, you thinking these guys stars and they will have, certain security measures in place, but we just walked right up on these people, The concert was with Boss, MC Breed, and Tupac. MC Breed is one of those underrated type rappers that people may not talk about. He's one of the first artists out of the Midwest to go gold in the hip-hop game. I consider him one of the kings of Michigan in terms of rap. You know, he really put Michigan on the map. This is before Eminem and all of them. But you know, a lot of those earlier artists that come from that Detroit area or Michigan area, they don't really get the credit like that. they sort of try to make it seem like hip hop started with the Eminems and D12 and all those guys. Yeah, they put it on the map and they, took it worldwide. But there was a lot of artists around Michigan. Folks like the Dayton Family. Esham. Just different artists. Detroit Most Wanted. But MC Breed was one of those underrated artists that people just don't talk about. So we got a chance to see Breed and Pac perform. Gotta Get Mines together. That was a historical moment as you think back, because both of those guys are actually not here. Interesting thing about that concert was Tupac called Janet Jackson a bitch. Like, he went on this rant about Janet Jackson on stage. They had just finished filming Poetic Justice, and whatever she did to him, he definitely didn't like it because he called her a few bitches at this concert. I believe Chris Webber and Jalen Rose was also there too, and this was the height of the 5-5 era, and they was actually at that concert. But we had snuck in this concert. Little and Chuck, they actually ended up getting backstage, and Little even got on the stage with the comedian, and we just really had a lot of fun. But Wuzzle actually didn't make it there, and the only reason why we went because he was a fan of Tupac, so Wuzzle called that one out. And we still talk about music nowadays. He may call me and ask me some things, or we just may have some discussions about music. We didn't have these extravagant adventures together, but I do remember this one incident. I had a rental car, and I gave the rental car to my brother. They gonna go hang out or do what they gonna do, whatever. But before they went, I begged them not to go to a club. Whatever y'all do, don't go to a club. What do? Go straight to a club. They gets into it with a guy. They done whooped up on somebody. They come back excited. They done jumped this guy, had this fight with this guy. All of a sudden, the guy left the club. He goes over there and shoots my brother's house up. Then we get in the call. Somebody shooting up the house. So we all pile in the car. And we runs over there. We see the guys. They pinned right there in the corner. But I had to end up pulling off. I'm driving the car. So I goes down to the end of the block. I'm doing a U-turn. When I do this, these guys raise up and start busting caps at us. They hit the car like 3 times. So the car end up getting shot up. We leave there. We go back to one of the houses. So I'm sitting there. I'm holding the gun. I'm in the kitchen. The car just got shot up. The gun goes off in my hand. Put a big old stupid hole in the wall. So next thing you know, I hear more gunshots. I come back to the door. This guy who they done got into a fight with just went and shot the house up over there. Now he over here shooting this house up. I'm sitting there looking at this stuff. So by the time I get outside, the guy had skeeted off or whatever. But that was just one of those adventures. I'm getting caught up in their stuff. That's some beef stuff they had going on. I'm getting dragged in that, But that was just one of those adventures right there. Like I said, we also didn't have a lot of beef like that out on the streets. And I say it's a good thing when you can avoid beef. It's just not a good thing. And it's not good for business to be out there beefing with people. And that was one of Wuzzle's policies. He's not trying to beef with people, And this thing began to grow, and when you start, growing and growing and growing, you start getting your swag game on, That's what brings me to, someone like Baking Soda, And a consensus that Scully is more influential when it comes to the swag game for Baking Soda. But you had to throw Wuzzle in there as well, because even though Scully is the main guy, you see Scully on a daily basis, but Wuzzle was right there too. So he picked up some of that swag from Wuzzle as well. So, these guys started getting into the Cartier. You know how it go. You start hitting the mall, you start getting your swag game on, That's what it's all about. You get money, you get swagged up. So it got to the point where he just got swagged up, but all the time he constantly getting more hot. He getting more hot because he's a one-man show, so any heat come on is actually going to come directly to him. He started getting hot, started swagging more, started hanging out more, It started to be more than the young guy I met way back in the day You know, when I met Wuzzle, he probably was 12 years old, and I thought he was 25 years old. That's literally what I thought. I thought he was just a grown ass man. Come to find out, he's only 12 or 13 years old. But he started becoming a hot boy. He's starting to bring a lot of heat to himself. Like I said, when he get that type of heat, he's a one-man show, so all the heat falls on him. And he ended up getting busted. He ended up getting raided. And he had to do a 5-year stint in the state penitentiary. It was all a setup, conspiracy to take him down. And they did that. So he had to go away. He had to sit down for 5 years. And he learned, about himself being locked down like that. And as he say, there's one guy in there, an older guy, that was somewhat of a mentor to him, But like I said, you know better, you do better. Nowadays, he's working, still loyal to his friends and buddies and family. He's just a 100 guy. That's why I call him my brother's keeper. This just a guy you would just love for life. He know better now. He do better now. He don't knock people hustle or do what you gotta do. He not knocking any of that stuff. But he knows this is what got him locked away, so he not gonna come out of there and do the same thing all over again just so he can end up back in the same spot. Subscribe to this channel, family. Tell a friend. Share this episode. This is Gangsta's Paradise. This is all about intervention and prevention. Breaking the cycle of keep sending our guys to the prison system.